Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or the Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, we're going to be going in depth into my week number 12 top 5 trade targets for the 2022 fantasy football season. But before we could get into things, I would like to ask that if you guys are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, that you please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. And while you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, please make sure that you do leave a like on today's video. It would help me out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter, please do so at NotoriousFantasy. We are going to be talking about the sponsor of today's video, BetMGM, a little bit later. And if you have any questions about week number 12, please ask down below in the comment section. I'd love to talk to you guys down there or in the Discord linked in the pinned comment. So now, let's get in to the video. We begin with my number 1 trade target of the week, Garrett Wilson, wide receiver of the New York Jumbo Jets, going up against the Chicago Bears this week at home in MetLife. Now, despite Zach Wilson playing absolutely atrocious last Sunday up against the New England Patriots, Zach Wilson averaged 2.2 inches per drop back, but in my opinion, there are greener pastures ahead for Garrett Wilson and this Jets team, but mostly for Garrett Wilson. Again, that game was incredibly bad up against the New England Patriots, and even Garrett Wilson, who has been kind of immune to this bullshit, even when Zach Wilson wasn't playing the best, Garrett Wilson was still able to eat like Ezekiel Elliott does at Thanksgiving. Week 11 at New England, 2 receptions on 3 targets for 12 yards. Now, prior to last week's fucking disaster, he had at least 7 targets in each of the last 2 games prior to that. He is the key player in this offense. With Breece Hall now out, he's been out for the last couple of weeks. Garrett Wilson is that guy, and I would be shocked if he couldn't bounce back going forward, especially with the schedule that he has going forward. So this week, like I stated right off the rip of talking about Garrett Wilson, he's got the Bears. Then after that, Minnesota, Buffalo will be tough, but then Detroit, Jacksonville, and at Seattle. So again, while I don't think Zach Wilson is necessarily the best quarterback on earth, he looks like the worst quarterback in the NFL. But ultimately, in those matchups, I do really think that Garrett Wilson will be able to shine through. And even if Zach Wilson doesn't play the best, I still do think that Garrett Wilson will be able to potentially be a league-winning wide receiver for the remainder of the fantasy football season. Next up, we move to Ramondre Stevenson, running back of the New England Patriots, going up against the Minnesota Vikings in Minnesota this week on Thursday during Thanksgiving. It is the night game. Running back number 16 last week in half PPR up against the Jets, having 15 carries for 26 yards, which is really bad compared to what we're used to with Ramondre Stevenson, but he did make up for it with 6 receptions on 6 targets for 56 yards. Now, he was outgained in the rushing department by Damian Harris, despite Damian Harris having less carries in that game. Though, this isn't really something that I'm panicking about, right? Having one game where Damian Harris plays better than Ramondre Stevenson should not make you panic, especially since Damian Harris had a huge run in that game, a 25-plus yard burst run that really boosted up his stats. Over the last few weeks, Stevenson has been the leader in the clubhouse in targets on the whole fucking team, not on the running backs. He's getting more targets than Jacoby Myers, all that. So Stevenson is clearly one of the focal points in this offense. And Stevenson is also coming off of a stretch of games where this guy was flat out fantastic prior to the bye. So they had a game this week, obviously, or last week, week 11. Then they had a bye the week before that. So prior to the bye, 4 of 5 games with over 17 half PPR points, and all 5 games of over 14 half PPR points. Now, Damian Harris isn't going to magically disappear, right? He's not going to just go away and be irrelevant, but ultimately, Ramondre Stevenson is the much better player. He's the much better pass-catching running back. He is the guy for this team, so one down game should not make you panic. Next up, we got Terry McLaurin, wide receiver of the Washington Commanders, this week going toe-to-toe with the Atlanta Falcons at home in Washington. The Commanders have now fully committed to Taylor Heinicke being the guy in Washington. He is the quarterback number one. Riverboat Ron had to talk to Carson Wentz about it. He said that the conversation went swimmingly. Well, to be honest with you, if I was Carson Wentz and I was making all that money to sit my ass on the bench, I'd be pretty happy as well, especially since he's not the best of a quarterback. Now, technically, Carson Wentz might be slightly better than Taylor Heinicke, right? He might be. But in terms of upside for Terry McLaurin, we need Mr. Heinicke under center because Heinicke is willing to make those crazy plays. Those fuck it, Terry McLaurin is out there somewhere. Let me heave this ball into two defenders and let my guy Terry McLaurin come down with it. Maybe McLaurin won't catch it. The defender will take it to the crib. But guess what? Heinicke has a crazy amount of confidence. Even if that doesn't work, you better believe next time out, he's going to try the exact same shit because he trusts Terry McLaurin. Now, last week, McLaurin had a down game in a very easy matchup up against the Houston Texans in Houston. Wide receiver 41 in half PPR, 4 receptions on 7 targets for 55 yards. Though it is important to note that he has had 7 or more targets in every single game from week 7 all the way through week 11 last week. There is definitely a risk when it comes to Terry McLaurin because of Heinicke, because Heinicke could shit the bed and ultimately derail the upside of Terry McLaurin. But at the same time, the upside is nowhere near as high without a quarterback that has the balls to make these crazy fucking throws that Terry McLaurin could catch from Heinicke. So ultimately, I think Heinicke puts Terry McLaurin in the position for greatness. He also puts him in the position to really sink your ship, right? Like the fucking Titanic. But ultimately, I am still trustworthy of McLaurin, especially at the investment price, because again, he didn't even play that great last week, but I do believe he bounces back up against a hot garbage Atlanta Falcons defense. But before we move on into the breakdown of the other 2 players that I want to be trading for prior to week number 12, I would like to give you guys a quick word from our friends and our sponsor over at BetMGM. Now, if you are a brand new user to BetMGM and you click on the link in the video description down below or in the pinned comment and you bet $10 on any World Cup game pre-game money line, you receive $200 in free bets if anyone scores in the World Cup going forward. So if you bet on a team, they lose, they get the shit beat out of them, and no one scores in that, someone's going to score in that game, right? If they lose, then you win your $200 in free bets. If no one scores in that game, your bet loses because it's 0-0, it's a draw. Someone scores in the next game, then bada bing, bada boom, you get your $200 in free bets. So essentially, all you got to do is bet $10 and you will receive $200 in free bets as long as you bet on a pre-game money line. So I'm going to show you right now on the screen on BetMGM. You're going to see the top bar. Top bar, you're going to click on soccer with the soccer ball next to it, and then you're going to pick literally any game. I would just pick the biggest favorite available on the day. You bet on them. You bet $10 on that, even if the bet loses, and even if there's no goal scored in that game, as long as there's another goal scored in the World Cup, you receive $200 in free bets, which is guaranteed to happen. They're essentially giving you $200 in free bets for fucking free, so make sure you guys check that out before it is too late, because it's only going to last for the next 2 weeks. It expires very soon, so make sure you guys take advantage before it is too late. At number 4, we move back into things with Mr. Jeff Wilson Jr., running back of the Miami Dolphins, this week going up against the Houston Texans in Houston. Now, a lot of people's trade deadline is this week, but you're not going to be able to get him. If your trade deadline, magically, you can trade for him next week, the trade value is going to be much higher. It's going to be harder to trade for him because the Houston Texans are one of, if not the worst run defense in the National Football League. And since Jeff Wilson was on bye last week, we got to go ahead and hop in the time machine to look back to week number 10 for his stats. In week 10, he went up against the Browns, and he finished as the RB6 in half PPR on the week. 7 carries for 119 yards and a touchdown, 2 receptions on 5 targets for 24 yards. Since he was traded to the Miami Dolphins, this man has had 215 all-purpose yards and 2 touchdowns in just 2 games. It appears to me that he is now the clear running back number 1 on this team of the Dolphins. And the Dolphins appeared to, at least up against Cleveland, realize that, hey, we don't have to just sling the rock all over the yard. If we're winning the game, we're just going to run the ball down your fucking throat with the backfield of Mr. Mostert and Wilson. And people are going to be nervous about Mostert. People are going to be like, oh, I have Jeff Wilson. Mostert's still there. He's not going to disappear, which is true. He's not going to disappear, but that'll make people panic. They'll realize that, oh, maybe these last 2 games a little fluky. Maybe Mostert is still the guy. But when you look at it, Jeff Wilson just showed up 3 fucking weeks ago and is already dominating. Imagine now how he's going to look coming out of the bye, knowing even more about the scheme, about the playbook. This Jeff Wilson guy might finish as a top 5 running back rest of season. I'm not saying he's going to. That would be a very outrageous claim to make. But top 12 rest of season? Might not be that hard. Might not be that hard. So final player to discuss here, we got Dalton Schultz, tight end of the Dallas Cowboys, going up against the New York Football Giants, also on Thanksgiving, a Thanksgiving brigade of games. Should be a fun time on Thanksgiving. Hope you guys all have a great Thanksgiving. Obviously, Thanksgiving isn't until Thursday, but maybe you're watching this on Thursday. So, finding a tight end, back onto the actual purpose of today's video, finding a tight end with a lead upside in fantasy football is very hard, right? There's only a couple of players right now that are healthy that actually fit that bill, and there's only 3 of them. That's Kelsey, Andrews, and George Kittle. There's 3. And really, there's only 2, I'd say. Mark Andrews and Kelsey, because Kittle has been very fucking up and down. So, in my opinion, I think that Dalton Schultz has a similar ceiling to those guys. He's definitely more risky, right? He's more risky because he's not baked in to get these crazy target numbers that a guy like Kelsey or Andrews or Kittle when they're healthy. But Schultz has that same upside in smash games. Now, last week, the Cowboys beat the brakes off of the Minnesota Vikings. They shit directly on their chest. Tight end 21 in that game. 3 receptions on 5 targets for 22 yards. The issue with that game is that it wasn't one of those high-scoring games where it's, bam, Dallas, fucking punch to the face. And then, they scored a touchdown. And then, bam, right hook back by the Minnesota Vikings. They score. And then Cowboys field goal. Vikings touchdown. Dallas touchdown. They're going fucking back and forth. It's a super high-scoring game. This was just a fucking massacre. This was a beat down. They beat the shit out of the Vikings. So Schultz and the whole team basically got benched at the end of the game, so he didn't even play the whole game. Now, the Giants aren't necessarily the best team in the NFL, right? But the Giants might be able to keep things close to where Schultz could really have that big game, right? So I think that with Dak Prescott back, Schultz has really turned it around. That is true. If you look at the stats with Cooper Rush versus with Dak, it is a big glaring difference. So I have full confidence in Schultz, and I will continue to talk highly of him. So I'm going to continue to bang the drum for the guy and tell you to trade for him right now. Right now, because again, it's very hard to find a tight end with a lead upside, and I believe Dalton Schultz has that. So thank you guys all so much for watching. If you did end up enjoying today's video, please make sure that you hit that subscribe button down below if you are new, and whether you are new to the channel or not, please make sure just leave a like on today's video. It would help me out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter, please do so at NotoriousFantasy. Make sure you check out that offer from BetMGM. Link down below in the video description. I love you guys all so much. I hope you all have a great rest of your guys' day. And as always, good boy!